Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
We are now just 4 hours away from the deadline Senate Republicans set for Christine Blasey Ford to decide if she will testify about the sexual assault allegation she's levied against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Joining me now for a breakdown on this and today's other political headlines, Theron Johnson, the former South Regional Director for the 2012 Obama campaign, and Brian Robinson, former spokesman for Georgia Republican Governor Nathan Deal. Gentlemen, welcome back. Let's start. There are 4 points on which that we know that Ford's attorneys and Senate Republicans are on either side of on, so we'll see if we can get some of those solved here. Let's put them up on the screen. First with the opening statement. Ms. Ford would like to, or Professor Ford would like to have a statement with no time limit. Do you think she should?
Look, give her say. I think Republicans have been bent over backwards to make sure that she can tell her story. So don't set any arbitrary rules. And obviously, we don't want her to filibuster. We have given her enough time. This process does need to move forward. But hey, give her as much time as she wants, as long as it's reasonable. But let her tell her story, because we're going to confirm him. He's going to be on the Supreme Court, and we need to get going on this. We've been more than fair.
You're going to, and I want to get to the other points, but you're going to confirm him. It doesn't matter what she says?
Look, no. But more than likely...
Clarify that, Brian. Let me know.
More than likely, he's going to be on the Supreme Court, right? Because nothing that has even been alleged to this point, now I don't know why you would hold anything back, but nothing that has been alleged up to now is disqualifying from the Supreme Court. I mean, there's a reason why we treat 17-year-olds differently in our criminal justice system than we do adults. Their brains aren't even fully formed. We have a lot of growing up to do when we're 17, and we don't even know that this is true.
Nothing that she's alleged has disqualified him from the Supreme Court. Theron.
Look, I agree that she definitely has got to be heard. And look, at a time where we know that this is a lifetime appointment, I mean, it's the Supreme Court of the United States of America. It's the highest court of the land. So anyone who has decided to put themselves and their family through this grueling nomination process had to be able to be open to whatever may come their way. I think that in this case with Mrs. Ford, is she should take as much time as she possibly wants, because I think that when she goes and testifies, I think it should be unlimited, because she's now exposing herself and all of her family about something that she alleged happened at a very young age. And so I do want to commend the Senate Republicans, particularly to Chairman Graisley, for giving her a little bit more time, but it has been sort of this air that we should rush this woman. And then also, and more importantly, what is the big rush to get this confirmed? Because, you know, let's not forget, Republicans spent enormous amount of time and months blocking Judge Garland, who should have been given a hearing and should have been given an up or down vote.
She was up for more than 400 days. Let me come back to this statement from you, though, that nothing that she's alleged has disqualified him from the Supreme Court. Even if it's true, even if he sexually assaulted her when he was 17 and she was 15, that's not disqualifying. He should be confirmed.
Look, there's one eyewitness to this, and that eyewitness says what she is saying didn't happen. You know, both have been named. I mean, we know who they are. They say that didn't happen. Look, this was not a rape. Everybody was fully clothed. Is it inappropriate? Absolutely. Is that how any young man should treat any young woman? Absolutely not. But if we look back and put this in a larger context, they were 17 years old, no crime was committed, something terribly inappropriate that we should teach young men not to do for sure. But this is not something that for a 17-year-old should disqualify them when they're in their 50s and have shown that they have been responsible adults that have no other accusers come out. And what I'm looking for is a pattern of behavior. And if we haven't seen any other example of this since
one
then,
sexual assault is a gimme.
As a 17-year-old, and sexual assault is, look, there are gradations, right? There are different grades of sexual assault. And I think we need to be careful about criminalizing 17-year-old behavior.
And this is an acceptable level of sexual assault.
I said it's inappropriate.
Okay.
It's not a crime.
Okay. All right. You've been clear about that. I mean, we can't press any more on that because you've been clear that this is an acceptable level of sexual assault. For a 17
that's not fair.
Well, I've asked you that. You said it's not a crime. He was 17 years old,
not a crime.
and it should not prevent him from being confirmed.
It should not prevent
even
him.
if he did it.
If the story as we know it is true, this should not prevent him from being confirmed.
Okay, that's your position. We've tested it, and you still hold to it. Let's go to another one here, that she should testify second after Judge Kavanaugh. Why should he defend himself and then she'll accuse him? Why is that order appropriate?
Well, I don't think that order is appropriate. I think that, again, I want to commend the Senate Republicans, particularly the chair of the Judiciary Committee, for giving her enough time. They've been working with her lawyers to really make sure that if this testimony happens, that they feel that she'll be put in a fair and proper setting. But I think that you should give Kavanaugh an opportunity to respond, but you've got to hear the alleged, victim's points of what she thinks that happened and what she encountered on this day. And so I think to have him go first and then have her go second will completely discredit her statement. And I think that at the end of the day, the American people deserve to hear what this woman wants to say if she chooses to testify. Yeah. But I do believe that Kavanaugh should have the opportunity to defend and actually give his version of what he remembers happening when he was the age of 17.
Why don't Republicans want to hear from Mark Judge under oath?
I'm sorry?
Mark Judge, under oath. The other person, the third person that Dr. Ford, Professor Ford, alleges was in the room. Why don't they want to hear from him under oath?
I don't know. And I'd put him up there. Again, I think that Republicans serve themselves by being as open as possible. And I think that's why you see them moving the deadline back, working with Dr. Ford and her attorney to make sure that she feels comfortable, that she feels secure, and that she can tell her story like she wants to. I think they're bending over backwards. And I think it would keep with that if they let Mr. Judge testify as well. Look, he's already said this didn't happen.
Yeah, but it's different to have your attorney release a statement and to say it under oath, under the penalty of perjury, right? Why not subpoena him? Make him come and make his case in front of the committee.
I would love for him to come make his case before the committee. I would absolutely love for him to do that.
Okay.
It is Monday, the 24th of September of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays because it's been another one of those long weekends. And it looks like we're going to be looking forward to a very short week that will seem like a million years long. Oh boy, we're going to be packing in a lot this week. Seems like Kavanaugh's accusers are coming out of the woodwork, and why wouldn't they? I mean, he belonged to one of those women-hating men's rights clubs back in the day. I think he left a mark, as they would sometimes recall, and they are. Yeah. Well, see, women are just confused, and because they're a little bit nutty and they're a little bit slutty. Yeah. Which is actually a big-time affront against Anita Hill, because the regal bearing that she carried, just really wasn't that slutty. I mean, come on. Really. I think what they meant is that she was black. And black people, by their inherent nature, are over-sexual, shall we say. One of those racist memes. And I was sitting there at the time going, they're falling for the racist meme and they're just saying it right on TV. Why doesn't anyone call them out on it? And then when Clarence Thomas said it was a high-tech lynching, then they picked up on it. oh, they got to shut this hearing down. We've somehow been aligned with a party that's trying to lynch a black man. No, you're not trying to lynch a black man. You're trying to keep a guy who's a toady for the right wing from sitting on the Supreme Court so he can remain quiet for, I don't know, what was it, 25, 30 years? Yikes. And then he starts talking. Oh, man. Well, so much going on. Let alone what's going on in the world. I mean, we could be headed for World War III if we're not careful. And when I say if we're not careful, it's, like, don't put certain things on Trump's desk. Or make sure you got Hannity and Perot tamped down. I mean, they might say something untoward. The next thing you know, the nukes are flying. Of course, I got to tell you, I think there's a military coup going on right now. A soft coup, shall we say, in that if the order comes to fire the nukes, I think there's going to be a delay when that order is given. I'm just saying. And that actually is a very scary proposition. Not that I want nukes to fly. But when we're looking to the military to save the day, that's how you lose democracy. Because at some point the military will say, oh, well, I don't know, we don't think you're ready to be able to, take over the reins with one person, one vote right now. Maybe sometime in the future. And then we'll be like all the other banana republics that, our intelligence types in the military said, oh, yeah, this will work. Jesus. There was a reason why the founders said, maybe we shouldn't have a standing military. But that's all back in the day, isn't it? Well, at the top, of course, that was the guy who was a spokesperson for Nathan Deal. Uh-huh. You know how they feel about women in their neck of the woods. Who said that it doesn't matter, whether he actually did what Dr. Ford says that he did, Kavanaugh. He's still going to be a Supreme Court justice because the die is cast. The rubles have been spent, and payment is due. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He didn't say that. But he might have, and probably should have if he wanted to be transparent. But what he did say transparently is that, there's different degrees of sexual assault, and this guy didn't even get to third base, let alone hit a home run. I mean, he just didn't even get to first base. Or as I like to say, it wasn't even a second-degree assault in the fourth degree. If you want to be exact in the codification in the manuals. Mm-hmm. Well, they're trotting them all out, and that appearance by that spokesperson or spokesman of Nathan Deal was before the article by Jane Mayer and Ronan Farrow about other people who have been subjected to, Kavanaugh and his cronies. Or actually, I don't think it wasn't Kavanaugh leading the group. He was a crony. Because excuse me, I know it's in the morning and some places before lunchtime, but let's be clear. Kavanaugh was a rat fucker in training. And he took to it really well. Rat fucker. He's a rat fucker. They're going to put a rat fucker on the Supreme Court. I guess if you're going to soften us up for some hostile foreign power to take over, that's one way. And the Federalist Society loves him because he's a rat fucker. Do they really love America and Americans? No. What's on the rest of the menu? Here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, I'm going to tell you. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross will be deposed about plans to rig the 2020 census. And the order actually says intent is really what matters here, and we don't like your intent. A Texas militia, speaking of intent, planned to terrorize and kill Islamic convention participants in Houston. Well, yeah, they probably thought they could get away with it. And Devin Nunes is egging on Trump to declassify even more documents about the Russia probe. Yeah, apparently the ones that this tranche of papers they want declassified doesn't quite expose the operatives that Vlad really needs to know about. Oh, and after the break, we then move to the chef's table, where a fired cop who planted drugs shows why Florida's felon voting ban is so insidious. And Trump appointees lied on their financial disclosure forms, according to their own resumes. Which came first, the disclosure form or the inflated resume? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You'll notice a very lovely, beautiful homepage. Thank you, Tom, for that. And the first thing you will notice is a scroll of voting, and there are links there to find out if you are registered to vote, and also links to vote. So rock the vote. Come on. Make sure you know they're doing all they can to keep us from voting. And not just us. Anybody they can. Truly. But then scroll to the bottom of the homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And check out her show on Saturdays at the Table with Kelly Lincoln. That's on at 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East Coast, and then at midnight on the East Coast, that would be 9 p.m. on the West Coast. Kelly teams up with Ricky, and they command the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour, and so check that out as well. Then take a gander to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, and you will then notice the contribute button, and that is a very important part of our operation because we are unable to do this without you. And there's a few tiers in which you could choose to become a Patreon of Netroots Radio. A mere $1. I mean, that's in some places a coffee costs a little bit more than $1. Can you afford that a month? And I don't know, maybe if you could afford, well, how about a latte and a croissant a month? Kick the cost of that our way. And I have to tell you, a little bit goes a long way here at Netroots Radio. And we pay our bills. We're not like Trump, who stiffs his contractors and his employees. Okay, we pay our bills. Otherwise, they'll stop you from resisting. How dare they? But thank you for your generosity. Once again, we are unable to do this without you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and we are also on Facebook. And you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I also post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Codes, where I can be found as Justice Putnam. Yeah. And I try to get those announcements on social media too, so look around for that. You can follow the show on Facebook and also on Twitter, where we are with the handle at Cookbook West. At Cookbook West on Twitter. And you can also find podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, got that all out of the way. Wilbur Ross. Yeah, he should be going to jail just for what he's doing with the Bank of Cyprus. But it's not enough. No, Wilbur and his, shall we say, deteriorating state thinks that he could, implement some sort of change in how we count people in the census, which is totally the opposite of how this first census was taken from, the founding, which I thought was supposed to be sacrosanct. But this guy doesn't know anything about sacrosanct. He was running a weird money laundering bank in Cyprus. Josh Israel of Think Progress brings us this offering here at the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, a federal judge said Friday that Wilbur Ross's intent and credibility are directly at issue in this deposition that he's going to be taking. Well, he's going to have to testify about his role in a controversial and possibly illegal Trump administration attempt to discourage immigrant participation in the next decennial U.S. Census. The Trump administration wants to add a question to the 2020 census about citizenship status that could lead to undercounting some 24 million people. The scheme is being challenged in federal lawsuits brought by state attorneys general who say the move is illegal and would hurt their access to federal funding, which is distributed based on the whole number of persons in each state. Well, we can't have that. I mean, already a state like Wyoming, who has very few people, has right now absolutely more power than a state like California that has, 100-fold, even more people? Majority rules, sure. Documents released this summer showed that Department of Justice officials were pressured by Team Trump, of course they were, to include citizenship questions. They also show the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross may have covered up the request's origins, which top lawyers for more than a dozen states have requested a chance to depose him about. So late on Friday, U.S. District Judge Jesse Furman of the Southern District of New York issued an order agreeing to the request. Secretary Ross must sit for a deposition because, among other things, his intent and credibility are directly at issue. The judge found that Ross showed an unusually strong personal interest in the matter before he ultimately mandated the addition of the citizenship question in the face of strong and continued opposition from the Bureau charged with carrying out the 2020 census. And that was in the words of the judge. The vulture capitalist Ross, nicknamed the king of bankruptcy after making a fortune running roughshod over workers and shedding retiree benefits, has had a rough go of things during his tenure as Trump's Commerce Secretary. Last month, Forbes' Dan Alexander reported that he may have siphoned more than $120 million worth of assets from his associates. And 2 weeks earlier, Ross settled a lawsuit days after being subpoenaed to testify about whether he had been truthful about his dealings with a former partner during his confirmation process. And in March, Ross made headlines for suggesting that concerns that Trump's trade wars could mean significant price increases for consumers were nothing more than hysteria. He said, paying more for goods doesn't mean anything to people. Yeah, they have all the money in the world. And he should know. Michelle, also of Think Progress, brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Earlier this month, a group of a few dozen armed members of the Texas Patriot Network, an extreme right-wing organization fighting for the true heart of Texas, decided to protest the Islamic Society of North America's conference in downtown Houston. The scraggly, unkempt group found themselves significantly outnumbered by counter-protesters and spent most of the day calling for convention-goers to either leave Texas or convert to Christianity. While they were largely peaceful, one Texas Patriot network, as the Houston Chronicle reported, sprinted past a police barrier to punch a counter-protester. However, new leaked chat logs show just how much violence the Texas Patriot network was preparing for and whom they planned on targeting. The logs, unearthed by left-wing blog It's Going Down, reveal the Texas Patriot Network members who were protesting alongside members of the Soldiers of Odin, a group founded by white supremacists, had planned to isolate and attack counter-protesters. Actually, there's a lot of people who are upset that white supremacists have co-opted, the whole Norse mythology. Can we stop with that? Nah, they're too stupid to. Communicating via Zello, one of the Texas Patriot Network members said that these mother effers are dead meat when they come out of that damn fence. Well, maybe he was going to claim now he's just being sarcastic. We were going to keep him as live meat. Okay, well, that sounds better then. The Texas Patriot Network members also discussed how to assault counter-protesters where police couldn't see them. One said, I'm just going to have to play this one out and see if I get lucky. It depends on where the police are going to be. For good measure, the Texas Patriot members also laced their back and forth with plenty of bigotry along the way, describing the day's festivities at the conference as full of stupid little goat effing music. Well, because they like, what they call country music now. Yeah, well, they're so stupid they don't even know it's not country music. These leaked conversations, if they can be authenticated, clearly indicate a coordinated plot by armed members of white supremacist and Islamic phobic groups to harm innocent civilians, CARE National Executive Director Nihad Awad said in a statement. This potentially deadly plot must be investigated by local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, and the perpetrators must be brought to justice. Well, there was a fellow live tweeting and live streaming an altercation. Well, it wasn't even an altercation. It was, I believe, actually in the Houston airport. And a guy was just a white guy. Was having a mental breakdown and screaming in the middle of the terminal and swearing and whirling about. And people are watching him, and no official came to calm the guy down or take care of the situation. Can you imagine if that was a Muslim speaking Arabic? Rosa of Salon brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, Nunes appeared on Fox and Friends to encourage Trump to declassify even more documents pertaining to the ongoing probe into collusion between Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and the Russian government. The first thing he should do is he should declassify all the documents that we've been asking for, Nunes told his hosts when they asked how Trump should react to the most recent developments in terms of the Russia probe, including reports that Rod Rosenstein had discussed wearing a wire and encouraging other members of Trump's cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment against him. Nunes stopped short of calling for Rosenstein's resignation, however, arguing that it would be politically dangerous to do so right now before the election without knowing all the facts. He added, though, if Rosenstein really did talk about wearing a wire, then for sure he should be fired. Earlier in his appearance, Nunes answered a question about whether former director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, well, he was the acting director, actually, had potentially leaked some of the recent developments regarding the Russia story. I think I beg the part that it is probably McCabe's team that did leak that. However, it's not something that you joke about. It's not something that you're sarcastic about. Yeah, it is. Because gallows humor is the only way that you can survive tragedy like you're experiencing it in real time. But he also reiterated his long-standing claim that the probe by Robert Mueller into collusion shouldn't be occurring at all because there was no crime. He's still going on like there's no evidence at all that Trump colluded with any Russian ever. Well, yeah, there is. And there's also a lot of evidence that hasn't been declassified now yet, has it? That shows that he has. You know what? We better get to our break. And when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and then finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. You've probably heard the financial advice that a diversified portfolio is better in turbulent times. Well, that same wisdom may hold true for our stocks of trees, because ecologists say forests with a diversity of trees are better at weathering drought. The reason?
There's a huge difference and a huge diversity of the water transport strategies in trees.
William Anderegg is an ecologist at the University of Utah.
It's everything from maybe having deeper roots or shallower roots to having these pipes that are incredibly well armored to withstand drought or incredibly weak in the face of drought.
Anderegg and his team studied droughts in 40 forests around the world. And the forests with diverse tree populations, with a mix of water management strategies, did better than forests made up of just one or a few species. Could be a couple reasons for that.
One is that there are other forces that are acting on the ecosystem at the same time, other stressors like insect attack or other things they're competing for light or for nutrients. And this is why a more diverse forest is going to be more functional. It'll be more resilient to drought, but maybe also have higher carbon uptake rates over the long term.
The second possibility, he says, is that a monoculture of drought-ready trees may look really resilient to drought.
Up until the drought is severe enough in which a whole bunch of the trees shut down or even die. And so that really thresholds cliff response you would get in a one-species forest and you may not get in a diverse forest.
The full report is in the journal Nature. The lesson for land managers, he says, is that forest restoration efforts following wildfires and disease outbreaks might want to focus on planting a diverse portfolio of tree species, so that even if water plummets, tree stocks will, hopefully, remain stable. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
War is hell. We've learned that over and over from the hundreds of thousands of deaths, uncountable maimings, torturings, wastings, and other horrors our soldiers have experienced in the multitude of wars in this century alone. America is now militarily involved in 76 countries, yet the war machine, including a massive army of profiteering corporate contractors and the politicians they buy, keeps demanding more. More troops, more money, more profits, more war. Finally, we the people, the 90+% of us who are not really aware of, much less engaged in this hell, need to awaken to another stark reality. War is stupid. The place to start admitting it and to begin ending the stupidity is 8,000 miles away from us. Quote, "It is time for this war in Afghanistan to end." That's not me talking. It's General John Nicholson, who has served 4 tours in that war and recently completed 31 months as the commander of our forces there. After 17 years, the longest war in U.S. history, after 2,202 Americans killed there, after trillions of dollars frittered away, after multiple policy shifts that falsely promise victory, it's widely conceded by our own military that we can't win. In fact, the war is such a low priority that Trump, the commander-in-chief, has never even bothered to meet with General Nicholson. Yet we have 14,000 troops stuck there, are pouring more blood and treasure into the lost cause every day, continue to prop up the inept and wholly corrupt Afghan government, and are destroying our nation's credibility as a global force for peace and democratic values. Why? Another former commander of U.S. forces answered with depressing candor. We continue to fight simply because we're there. This is Jim Hightower saying, did I mention that war is stupid? If we're only there because we're there, it's way past time to leave.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Do we want to minimize or maximize the chances that a person who is being released from prison can lead a successful and law-abiding life on the outside? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Over 90% of persons in jails and prisons today will be released. And it is undisputed that family and friend visits to a person behind the razor wire is crucial. Visits are the fragile lifeline which allow a person in prison to maintain a support system in the community, which is what will allow him or her, in most cases, to have a chance to succeed after his or her release. In 2018, the allegedly liberal state of Massachusetts instituted a new system to restrict inmate visitation by friends and families, making Massachusetts now one of the most restrictive states in the country with regard to prison visitation. As Jesse White, an attorney with Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts, said, quote, "The evidence supports that efforts should be made to make visitation more open and more accessible whenever possible. But that is not what the Massachusetts Department of Correction has been doing. It is doing the opposite." Hopefully, the lawsuits challenging this new policy will succeed. If they don't, the prisoners and their families will pay a big, big price. And so will everyone else. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, September 24th, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger. Results from the recent electoral process in Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, have not been released, but the outcome is quite clear. King Mswati III will continue to be the country's leader. Mswati is the last absolute monarch in Africa. The so-called elections, which were held on Friday, September 21st, have been condemned by many as a sham. No political parties were allowed to participate. Almost all of the so-called candidates were running as individuals supporting the king, and no overt campaigning was allowed. What's more, Ms. Wahiti can directly appoint members of the legislature. Much of the opposition to Mswati's rule has come from the labor movement. Banned for years, the Trade Union Congress of Swaziland, TUCUSWA, is now legally recognized, but it faces almost insurmountable opposition from the government. I talked to Girly Magagula about the situation in Eswatini. Ms. Magagula is the organizing secretary for TUCUSWA's Women's Committee. I asked her about respect for human rights in Eswatini, especially the rights of women.
Indeed, it is not clearly stipulated in the country about the human rights. The way they articulated the constitution, they did write it down, but in practicality, it is very, very challenging for women to know their rights, and they need a lot of capacitation, and that is where the social society comes in to try and balance that gap that was left when the Constitution of Swaziland was introduced to the Swazi people. And indeed, the Swazi women have a challenge about that because as a patriarchal society they are not familiar, and some of them are ignorant with their rights, so they are vulnerable to abuse, and gender inequality prevails in that country. Because of that, women are left behind. They don't participate because they lack education about their rights.
What has been done to help curtail violence against women in Swaziland?
The situation there, as I've mentioned, that the lack of knowledge for women in Swaziland is what really leads to them being vulnerable to gender-based violence, because some of them, they don't have the courage to speak out because they are marginalized. Their voice, they are suppressed, and there are measures though that the social dialogue community is trying to do to help them. There are campaigns that are conducted by non-profit making organizations. That includes the Women's Dialogue that was conducted, and they invited their stakeholders that include TUCUSWA. They were part of that campaign where women were encouraged to speak out about their rights.
What is TUCUSWA doing to help the workers of the country since its re-registration as a legally recognized labor federation?
TUCUSWA is really trying to work hard. After its registration, it has been able to have two structures, that is the women's structures, that is the youth structures. It is working very hard to try and let everyone be involved in the federation movement, so that all the people in the country, they are well represented. The workers know their rights. They know what is due to them. They know how to stand up for themselves.
And that's it. international labor news you can use. You can find more labor news on our website at www.radiolabor.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Labor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Well, fall is upon us. We are having our, late summer and into fall type of weather, which we sometimes call Indian summer. I don't know if we should call it that anymore, but regardless, the reds and oranges haven't quite come upon us, but the warm days and chilly nights have. Looks like, we had an overnight low in the low 50s, which isn't so bad, though we are expected to go up into the low 80s today. Oh my. And then tomorrow, we're supposed to be in the upper 80s to low 90s. Don't do this to us. I don't want to catch a cold again, a summer cold. But it is rather pleasant anyway, having this late summer. We'll have that overnight low in the 50s. We'll be in the low 90s, upper 80s tomorrow. We are sunny at the moment with winds out of the northwest, a negligible 1 mile per hour, picking up in a few hours where it will shift out of the northeast at its usual 5 to 10 miles per hour, and will continue that way through the night until tomorrow, where then winds will decrease to light and variable. Dry conditions will continue, not even a smidge, not even a 10% chance, damn you. Ragweed pollen is at moderate. The air quality index is rated in the good range at 34 parts per million. And the angle of the sun has angled even more steeply because the daytime UV index is at 4 in the moderate range, down from 5 just yesterday. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.41 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and humidity is at 71%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. And it's true, too. Each one of these data points are in someone's backyard, patio, wherever they've planted them. They're personal, too. All right. Well, the fellow or lady's personal weather station in London is registering 59 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. Yeah, I just went ahead and put in Fahrenheit rather than mix it with a Celsius and whatnot. Paris is 62 degrees and sunny. Rome is 84 and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm, electrical storm advisory in which the electrical grid might be knocked offline. You don't like that there. No one does. Kiev is 53 and cloudy. Kabul is 73 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 77 degrees with a rain shower. Tokyo is 74 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 53 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 and partly cloudy. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And we have a advisory here, a small craft advisory on the bays and the rivers. Let's see exactly what we're looking at here, folks. I'm sorry. New York, you're 63 degrees, and you have a small craft advisory with 10 to 20 knots with gusts up to 30 knots. So do take care if you're out there sailing or even on the ferry trying to get to work or lunch. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Josh Israel brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Well, a judge has already vacated 8 drug sentences, and another 263 are under review by one cop who planted evidence to increase his arrest totals. I guess he wanted a promotion. Florida Department of Law Enforcement confirmed that it is investigating Deputy Zachary Wester, a former Jackson County Sheriff's Office deputy. The now fired officer has been accused of planting drugs on people at traffic stops. Why is this guy not in jail? Some sort of implied immunity? Oh, you just lose your job, and then he'll be hired somewhere else because they like that kind of cop? While the investigation is still ongoing, prosecutors have already dropped charges in more than 24 cases, saying the evidence that Wester may have planted methamphetamine caused them to lose confidence in his arrests. On Friday, a Florida circuit judge vacated at least 8 people's sentences. State Attorney Glenn Hess, the chief prosecutor for that circuit, said his office is now reviewing 263 total cases involving the alleged crooked cop from the past 2 years. But had this story not come out, it is quite possible that dozens of innocent Floridians would have had felony convictions on their record, and under Florida's especially punitive disenfranchisement law, that means they would have lost their right to vote, even after completing their sentences. Rick Scott's administration has proved nearly impossible for ex-felons to have those rights restored. On November 6th, that could all change. Thanks to a voter initiative called the Voter Restoration Amendment, Florida voters who have not been disenfranchised will consider Amendment 4. This constitutional amendment would give many of the estimated 1.5 million Floridians who have lost their voting rights due to a felony conviction, about a quarter of the national total, by the way, a chance to earn those rights back by completing their sentences, parole, and or probation. The amendment would not apply to those convicted of murder or sexual offenses. To pass, it needs to garner a 60% supermajority, although early polling shows that is possible. Should Sunshine State voters pass the amendment, voters would not only be giving those with felony convictions a second chance after they've repaid their debt to society, they would also be robbing corrupt cops of the ability to disenfranchise the innocent. And I also might add here in a little peek of a rant. What is it about our humanity in our country now where we seek retribution rather than rehabilitation? Isn't the goal of what it is to be America to raise all boats, everyone to the most of their potential, and those who have paid their debt to society are now free people? I want my America back.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour, pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays is an article out of ProPublica. Well, what is in a resume? A lot when it comes to Trump staffers. It's no surprise that hundreds of staffers on the 26 presidential and congressional campaigns parlayed their work into political jobs in the Trump administration. But you wouldn't always know about those roles from reading their financial disclosures, which sometimes reveal them and sometimes don't. Details about the past jobs and work histories of these staffers, from on-the-ground field work for Trump's presidential campaign to fundraising for super PACs supporting Republican congressional candidates, can be found in the place where people tend to exhaustively list their credentials. Where is that? Well, of course, their resumes. The Washington-based transparency group Property of the People took information from ProPublica's Trump Town database and submitted Freedom of Information Act requests seeking the resumes of more than 2,700 political appointees in the Trump administration. Now, they've added the documents the group collected to the Trump Town app and created a separate page so that you can examine them yourself. And it's going to be updated as they get more. Think of the resulting information as the equivalent of batting stats on baseball cards. In this case, for staffers in the Trump administration, it's data viewed as fascinating by some and as minutia by others. The resumes received so far largely cover staffers with mid-level and junior positions, and many in this initial batch come from the Departments of Agriculture, Interior, and Transportation. They reveal a wide range of roles played by some of them in propelling Trump into the White House, and also their sometimes quirky employment histories. Consider, for example, the resume for Kevin Jayne, now at the Department of Energy as a special advisor for renewable energy. It claimed that, as a site specialist for the campaign, Kevin Jayne was entrusted with the security of President-elect Donald J. Trump and the Trump family and others, as well as managing the flight manifest for Trump's plane and making sure members of the media were secured in assigned areas to provide best possible coverage. Yeah, you mean pen them in so you can make sure that you have them covered? Jayne's resume also indicates that he's a former Chicago area utility worker and bouncer. Well, of course. Jason Funes, a special assistant to the Department of Interior, wrote in his resume that he worked for the Trump campaign in South Florida, targeting Hispanic voters. The document also indicates that he worked as a sales representative for a motor scooter company in South Florida. Well, he gets around. And David Matthews, no relation to the pop star, okay? Now, a confidential assistant at the Farm Service Agency, oversaw the campaign in 32 pivotal counties in western Pennsylvania. According to his resume, he used to be a legal receptionist and once sold his own line of custom-scented candles in Alabama. Wow. I guess he wanted to put custom-scented candles next to the pig. Does knowing that one staffer used to make scented candles provide any valuable insight into the Trump administration? Perhaps not. But between the original Trump Town database and this new information, we can glean ever more detailed portraits of the individuals who do the nitty-gritty of running the federal government, or, in this case, dismantling it from within. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio will broadcast on with all the breaking news that's breaking, right now. We'll visit with you tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays here. And do stay tuned for all that breaking news as it breaks on Netroots Radio. And we will meet up tomorrow here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.